My name is Alonso-Minutti, and the title of my book is Mario La Vista, Mirrors of Sounds.
My name's Jane Bernstein, and the name of my book is Printing Music in Renaissance Rome.
My name is Ryan Bunch, and the title of my book is Oz and the Musical, Performing the American Fairy Tale.
My name's Anna Chalenza. I'm a professor at Johns Hopkins University, where I teach courses in creative writing and also jazz history. The book is called Music and Human Flourishing, and it was part of a series that Oxford did, really trying to give a little bit more emphasis to the humanities.
I'm Rachel Golden. I'm professor of musicology at University of Tennessee. I work on medieval music from the 12th and 13th centuries in France and Occitania. I study cultural aspects of song, devotion, the Virgin Mary, geographies, crusading, and words-music relationships. The title of my book is Mapping Medieval Identities in Occitanian Crusade Songs.
I'm Julian Hook. People know me as Jay, and my book is Exploring Musical Spaces, a synthesis of mathematical approaches.
My name is Daniel Jordan, and I am a research fellow at the University of Toronto. And my book is Coros y Danzas, Folk Music and Spanish Nationalism in the Early Franco Regime from 1939 to 1953.
My name is Kelsey Klotz. I am an assistant professor of musicology and ethnomusicology at the University of Maryland, College Park. When I wrote the book, when it came out, I was at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and the book is Dave Brubeck and the Performance of Whiteness.
My name is Marius Kozak. I'm an associate professor of music theory at Columbia University. The title of my book is Enacting Musical Time, the Bodily Experience of New Music.
My name is Melinda Latour, and I'm an associate professor at Tufts University. The title of the book is The Voice of Virtue, Morals, Song, and the Practice of French Stoicism, 1574 to 1652.
My name's Nathan Link, and I'm a professor of music at Centre College, which is a liberal arts school. And I studied in graduate school with Ellen Rosand, who was quite important in the development of a lot of these ideas. And then I kind of reconvened with her in the last stages of this book and worked with her. So the book is called A Poetics of Handel's Operas, and it is a look using narrative theory at how it is that these operas and opera generally tells stories.
My name is Rachel Mann, and I am one of the co-editors of the Roberto Gerard Reappraising a Musical Visionary book, and it was written for the British Academy and published by Oxford.
My name is Marisol Quevedo. I'm assistant professor of musicology at the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami. And the title of my book is Cuban Music Counterpoints, Vanguardia Musical in Global Networks.
My name is William Rothstein. I often go by Bill Rothstein, and my book is this one, The Musical Language of Italian Opera, 1813 to 1859.
My name is Emily Wilborn. I teach at CUNY at the Graduate Center and at Queen's College, and I have just finished this book, Voice, Slavery and Race in 17th Century Florence.
I'm hoping to inspire future research by continuing actually this work in the Franco regime and to look at how this culture that was being invented, that was and being projected as being ancient, is still being performed and recreated today, and what does this mean for contemporary Spain and contemporary Spanish folk troops, for example, and also how Spaniards and people abroad think about Spanish history and culture.
I'm hoping that the book will help readers to view some of the songs with fresh eyes. Many of these are songs we already know from other contexts. There are quite a few troubadour songs that have often been discussed in terms of courtly love and idealized love. And I sought here to put some of those songs into a more geopolitical context.
So there's been a lot of research done on music and human flourishing, as in playing an instrument can give you a positive attitude or it can create a sense of community. What we did with this volume was we talk about music as a humanities discipline. So it's not so much about making the music or listening to the music in a community. It's really about thinking, and music is thought, and how do we as music scholars find human flourishing in our own research.
I love the moment of discovery, and I think in this book there was such a transformation in my own understanding of these musical sources. I discovered early on that they were moral and philosophical in nature. They've been many times categorized as either religious or secular, and I think the discovery that this was actually doing moral philosophy, and then starting to discover that there's specific stoicism being communicated through these musical texts, transformed how I understood the purpose of these songs and how they were used in the period.
Oz and the Musical is about how the musical as an American art form has helped to invigorate and to disseminate what has been called the American fairy tale, The Wizard of Oz, which began as a children's book but became a classic film and has been adapted to the stage subsequently in what have become some of the most popular musicals in the repertoire. And so the book is about how musical theater makes the American myth that is The Wizard of Oz participatory.
So my book is the product of about 15 years of research and writing, all the way from my dissertation through now being a professor. And I think some of the most rewarding things have been the things that I've found confusing and unexpected, and the connections, right? I found that Cuban composers after the 1959 revolution were using really experimental and avant-garde techniques. And that in a socialist context didn't make sense. And so exploring how they justify that, why they were doing that, and to find out that they were doing it through aesthetic and political reasons. They were justifying their use of experimental and avant-garde techniques in the service of the socialist revolution was really interesting and confusing and perplexing, and I think that's one of the main things I would love people to take away.
Because we have an urgency to diversify cultural programs and educational curricula, I made it a point to make this book an open access publication so that everyone could have access to this material. The book also offers a nuanced narrative that, while it's centered on the music of La Vista, it speaks to the interdisciplinary and intertextual dimension of his book. So the book is about music, but is also about the other arts, especially poetry and visual arts, and the literary arts.
I think what I enjoyed the most was realizing that I don't need to be an absolute expert about everything that was in the book before we started that journey. And so one of the things that I found to be really cool is that I am a Roberto Gerard scholar, and I know a lot about particular aspects of his life and his music. But through this process of being an editor and also an author is that I learned so much about British culture. I learned a lot about exile studies. I learned about cultural translation and a lot of things that really now will take me to inform my work beyond, this book or any sort of projects like that. So that was actually really cool.
The book really begins in 1476, which was the year that the very first book contained music printed from movable type. And sort of only 20 years after Gutenberg invented the process, so to speak, and then takes it all the way up to 1600, and when opera begins. And it really gives a kind of history of this revolutionary process, how people used books, how composers were able to disseminate their music in ways that had nothing to do with their patrons. And how they were able to communicate who they were through the medium of print.
The topic of my book is musical time as reimagined through the moving bodies of listeners. So temporality in music is often considered in terms of the score or in terms of analysis of notated music. Here I'm taking a slightly different approach. I'm drawing on phenomenology, embodied cognition, and ecological psychology to make an argument that temporality in music emerges from the way that people interact with the sound. And I provide some analytical extensions of that, examples of that, to see what kinds of other ways of thinking about music are possible when we consider the listening body.
Analyzing operatic music, which had a kind of golden age with people like Harold Powers, Philip Gossett, people like that. And it has fallen a little bit into, disuse, I suppose, and I want to revive that. And for music theorists, my professional affiliation is music theory. It's a matter of I really want to sell this repertoire, which has been, I must say, sort of systematically disrespected in North American music theory since its beginnings. This is something I feel quite strongly about. The founders of American music theory, people like Hindemith and Schoenberg and Heinrich Schenker, notice they're all German names, either ignored or condescended to or outright dismissed Italian opera as art. And so young people who go into music theory often imbibe that attitude without even realizing it. So I really want, especially to my younger theory colleagues, to show them how much richness there is in this repertoire and how important it is to the history of musical practice in 19th century music.
I guess I would say that a lot of readers will come to share my view that a mathematical understanding of music can really enhance the musical experience. Some people might approach this topic a little bit warily with the idea that thinking about music mathematically could somehow blind you to the beauty of the music, but I don't think that way at all. I think understanding music mathematically doesn't make the music any less beautiful, it makes it more beautiful, and I would love it if some of the readers come away thinking that also.
All the references I saw to people who were either described as black, as Moro or Mora, Turkish, which meant Muslim or Middle Eastern, so Turca, Turco, or enslaved, so Schiavo, Schiavo. And that appendix is like 170 pages long. So I think it makes the point very clearly that I haven't made this up, but that there's a lot more work that can be done, and other people can use this as a starting point to then go into the archive and bring forth more information, because this is a part of the history that's been really missing, both in Italian studies and in musicology in general, to really understand what was going on in this early modern period.
The other part that I would hope that readers would take away is essentially kind of care. I think what happened as I was writing this book, it was a process, and it was a process of me coming to terms with my own relationship to whiteness, to white supremacy, to understanding the role of that within jazz studies and musicology and ethnomusicology more broadly. But it was a process that required a lot of care toward other folks, toward voices that have been historically marginalized in these fields.
Although these are applied primarily to Handel's operas, these principles that I've developed, other composers are mentioned quite a lot, and certainly, although a poetics of Verdi's operas or Puccini's or Mozart's would certainly in very important ways be different, and in very interesting ways be different, I think that doing this sort of a project, uncovering the sort of storytelling framework, the narrative structure, could certainly be applied to other genres of opera and other composers. And I would very much encourage other researchers to take these principles in that direction.